October 11th, 2022 school board meeting. Time is now 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll move on to agenda item number 1, which is the adoption of the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
I'm gonna go ahead and make an amendment to that. If we can move agenda item 9 to be immediately after agenda item 6.
So we have a motion to move second by Dawn. Any board discussion about the motion? Any public comment reference the motion, the agenda? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0, sorry. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, the flag salute, which will be led by Trustee Carini. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, which is a superintendent report. Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you, Mr. Varner. Good evening, trustees and everyone in the crowd this evening. First thing I wanted to do or let you know about, we have been blessed once again with a finalist for the Nevada Teacher of the Year competition, and by random chance, she happens to be here this evening. So Adrienne Wiggins was recognized as one of the 5 finalists for Nevada State Teacher of the Year. And recognizing that success and maybe basking in some past success as well, that is the 5th consecutive year that we have had a nominee from the Carson City School District considered in the finalists. We had Rachel Croft last year, Christina Bourne the year prior, Nick Jocks, and another one who just happens to be here this evening, Miss Joanna Kaiser. And a history, just because we're on a roll with this. We've had 4 Teachers of the Year for the state of Nevada here in the Carson City School District. Leanne Morris in 2008. In 2011, is she here? I thought Cheryl Macy, I thought she might be here. 2012, Deanna LeBlanc, and 2013, Adam Watley. So just having a good chance to reflect a little bit on the success that we've had here. Other items, we are having flu clinics at the schools October 17th through October 27th. Information has been sent home via ParentsSquare, and parental permission is required for any students receiving a vaccine. A reminder that tomorrow, October 12th, and next Wednesday, October 19th, are both minimum professional learning days for staff, and students will be released early. And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, board reports. Carson High School, I'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Ava Schofield. I'm representing Carson High again this evening. So first of all, our fall sports are wrapping up, and we have a lot of our teams going to regionals in the coming weeks. So we're super excited about that. And then other than that, this week we're having a Beat Douglas week before our Douglas game on Friday. So we're doing Spirit Week, so we're doing dress-up days. And so yesterday it was upperclassmen versus underclassmen. Upperclassmen wear blue, underclassmen wear white. Today was bikers versus surfers. Wednesday is barbecue dad versus soccer mom. Thursday is country versus country club, and then Friday is Carson versus Douglas Pink Out, which is the theme for the game on Friday. And that's everything that I have for you, unless you guys have any questions. Yes.
So how does a barbecue mom dress? Is that what it
Did
was,
I-
a barbecue mom?
Barbecue dad and soccer mom.
Okay, how does a soccer mom
So
dress?
like in like the Lululemon leggings and like the visor, like the quintessential soccer mom. Yeah. Yeah. For real. Okay. Is
Any
that-
other comments or questions from the board?
Okay.
I just want to thank you and the other student representative for being here. I know you guys rotate every year, but we really do appreciate hearing from you and thank you for your involvement.
Of course. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to Pioneer Academy. Anybody here from Pioneer? Thank you. Welcome back.
Good evening. Hello. Hi. Okay. So, it is Pink
Just
Panther
go ahead and
Month.
state your name for the record. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm Aaliyah Baruman from Pioneer Academy. It is Pink Panther Month at Pioneer Academy. We're wearing pink to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The week of October 3rd through the 7th was Respect Week at Pioneer Academy. There were daily reminders about respect, classroom presentations, and respect bingo at lunch, which was very interesting. Oh gosh, I'm going to butcher this, so I'm sorry. Thank you to Danielle Langum and the student leadership team for their work. And the Pioneer Greenhouse has plants growing, which include leafy greens and lettuce blends. And the Pioneer Spirit Week will be October 25th through the 27th. And we are currently discussing the themes for that week. And that concludes the announcements for Pioneer Academy.
Good. Any questions? Any comments?
Just
Joe?
the same comment. I want to thank you for being involved. I think it's, I don't know if it's all that, if it's nerve-wracking a little bit or, you got better things to do, but the fact is you girls show up and we really appreciate hearing from you. And I just want to thank you very much for being a part of our board while you're here.
Yeah, it's very fun.
There again, you're doing a great job too, so thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to updates from the Nevada Association of School Boards.
So, not a lot. Of course, the NASB conference is coming up in November. We'll have some familiar faces from Carson presenting. We'll have Superintendent Fueling. I will be part of a panel. Ryan will be presenting, and we're pulling Mr. Stokes back in to take part in a panel, so we'll be well represented at the conference. And hopefully we'll all receive some much needed training, and it'll be a great weekend. Also, obviously another thing I do for NASB is I'm a member of the State Board of Education, and as part of that team today, I was able to attend the Teacher of the Year ceremony in Sparks, Nevada, and wanted to congratulate Mrs. Connie Hall, who's a kindergarten teacher at Diedrichson Elementary School. It's a nice ceremony, and as an educator, I don't think it matters what school you're at when you see a teacher get recognized for all that they do. It just feels great, and seeing her kindergartners cheering and the kids that were in her class the years prior, and just that joy was great. And so, we have great teachers all over this state, and I think that it's nice to point that out and make sure everybody knows that teachers are working hard and they deserve the recognition. So congratulations to Mrs. Wiggins also for being recognized, and it's a nice event.
Well said. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to board announcements. Joe?
Thank you, Mrs. Wiggins. Congratulations. It's exciting. Congratulations to all our past winners and quite frankly, to all our teachers in general. Like Trustee Walker said, I mean, you and the whole staff at all the schools work so hard. And there's just a lot to do, and there's always more work to do and more work to do. And sometimes it can feel thankless, but I know, speaking for the 7 of us up here, it's not thankless from our perspective. If I could throw you a celebration every day, I would. Just thanks for everything you do. I have 3 kids that went through the district, and they all were successful, and they're finding their own path. And it's because of all of you and the parapros and the administrators and the bus drivers and nutritionists. I mean, it's everybody. So thank you very much for everything you do. It really does not go unnoticed. As far as Pioneer, I don't have anything specific for Pioneer, but I'll put in my usual plug. Those of you that are interested in getting close after high school, whether it be colleges, universities, trade schools, military, take a look at the Scoop. You can go online and get that. Scholarships and the different types of monies that are available to the families and the students to help offset some of the costs, if not all the costs, for some of their post high school pursuits. It's well worth the time and effort to look through it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mike?
I don't have anything from Mark Twain Elementary School this evening, but I was going to commend Dan Davis for making sure everybody sees the great things that our schools are doing for the Week of Respect. So I was kind of perusing through that article, and there were some pictures, and I think it was nice to highlight the great things that our schools are doing.
Thank you. Stacy?
I attended the chili bingo night at Carson High for the marching band. It was really well attended. Mr. Fueling was one of the judges. Picked the winner at my table. That was kind of exciting for her. So that was pretty cool. I'm not sure how much money they raised, but it's always a fun event. And then, as you know, I'm the representative for the rules on the Governor's Advisory Council to Family Engagement. We're having our virtual summit, and it's on October 22nd. I've left some literature by the door, but you can go to Nevada Department of Education's website and sign up for that. So it should be a pretty good event. And then, last but not least, there's one more. We have another award winner in our midst, because Mrs. Garcia, Jessica Garcia, was recognized this year by the Nevada Press Association for her work and received first place in explanatory journalism for Carson School Superintendent Search and the 8 stories that went with that. So congratulations, Jessica. And she got a 3rd place one too, but
Thank you, Stacy. Don? No report from Don. Lupe?
So from Silliger Elementary School, Principal Zona is very excited about the pumpkin patch event this coming Saturday from 9 to 3. She hopes to see many families attend. And then next week on October 17th, they're going to have the flu shot clinic for parents wanting their children to get the flu shot. And then on the 18th, they will have members of the fire department coming to the school to do a demonstration and talk about prevention to all the students from kindergarten through 2nd graders. And then picture day makeup will be on the 20th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Laurel?
Okay, for Fremont Elementary School, tomorrow is their walk to school day for Safe Routes to School, and they are meeting at 7:45 at Jackson's. And also, Dr. Ward would like to remind everyone to get ready for parent-teacher conferences at the end of the month and get those scheduled as soon as they're available. For Fritch Elementary School, tomorrow, October 12th, is the last day for the PTA Charleston Wrap fundraiser. And the top winners in each grade will have an opportunity to put a pie in either Mr. Brown or Miss Hoppy's face. So if you need wrapping paper, find yourself a Fritch Elementary student and get some. Friday, October 14th is the Nevada Moves Walk to School Day, when Fritch will be participating, and staff will meet families at 7:45 in the morning at the John Mankins Park in Silver Oak and walk to school from there. And then also, I made it my own pink out today because I wanted to recognize and support breast cancer awareness, and just wanted to remind everyone to get whatever services you need, get your checkups, and also send love and support to all those. I know everyone in this room has and knows someone that's been affected by breast cancer, and we have staff members, and I just want everyone to know that we support them. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. The Week of Respect went very well at Carson Middle School. Students engaged in activities at lunch and in the classroom to encourage respectful behavior in and out of school. They ended the week with a fun assembly about respect. They are joining forces with Eagle Valley Middle School to send a group of eighth graders to the Construction Center Fair at the Reno Convention Center this Friday. The goal is to encourage students to explore the many career opportunities found in our area here. And I do not have a report from Boardwick tonight, so that ends my report. And we'll go ahead and move on to association reports. Do we have any association reports tonight? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is public comment. So the board knows we have no written comments tonight that were submitted. Well, we'll call for public comment. Are you going to come up and speak? What? Yeah, let me go ahead and just finish this little spiel real quick. In making a public comment, speakers are asked to come to the table or podium, speak into the microphone, and identify themselves for the record. Commenters are instructed to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes and not simply repeat comments made by others. And also want to remind people that comments should be made in reference to something under the jurisdiction of this board. So go ahead, state your name for the record. We'll start.
My name's Angela Hark. My son attends Eagle Valley Middle School. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to leave, but I just wanted to comment on how amazing that school is. If I could stay here, we would. The only thing that I really want to stay because that school. My son comes home and he has so many good things to say about the teachers and the school. I had him at a school in California for 8 years, and the bullying was never addressed. It was addressed right away here. It made me feel really good. And I just wanted to commend your guys' district. I've been involved with PTA and PTO over the years, and I really wish we could stay. This is an amazing place. You guys have an amazing school, and I just wanted to let you know.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it. And we wish you guys were not leaving.
Yeah, I wish we weren't either.
But thank you for your very kind comments. Appreciate it. Any other in-person public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 9, which we moved ahead.
President?
Yes.
Did you receive any virtual public comment?
No, I said that at first.
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 9, which we moved ahead of agenda item number 7. Mr. Mark Cornick will be presenting.
Thank you, President Varner, trustees, executive staff. I appreciate being here tonight. First, I wanted to also thank you all for your kindness and support at the last meeting, at the first reading. I was really blown away by your enthusiasm, and it's pretty exciting. I did go back and make a couple changes in that we talked about last week. One on the front page, on the third line where it says facilities shall, and we inserted one practical at that spot. It was a suggestion by Mr. Cassiopo. And on the back, the second to last line of number 2, district since the last report period was added. And that's all I have, and if I can answer any questions.
Any
Sure
comments or questions? Mike?
I would just suggest a comma after practical. So it's extra information, so when practical. Since you took it out, I would just put it with another comma.
Oh, my glasses on. Is that a period I put there? No. Nothing. Okay. Okay.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Cornick? Joe? We're ready for the motion. Thank you.
Number 9, I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve October 11, 2022 as the adopted date for policy 830, conservation and sustainability.
We have a motion by trustee Cassiopo,
Second.
second by trustee Walker. Any board discussion on the motion?
I just need one clarification. We have this other piece with it. Does this go with the policy? Or what is this for?
No, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned something there. No, that was just for information for you guys. It's mentioned in the policy, the 17 UN Sustainability Development Goals, and that's kind of how we base the policy around.
Thank you, Stacy. Any public comment reference to this motion? I see a couple hands. Go ahead and come on up. And just remember to state your name for the record. We appreciate you guys being here.
My name is Callion Ramirez, and good evening, trustees. Thank you for considering the policy on sustainability. At Empire Elementary, the Green Biscuits are working really hard to make Empire a green business, and making sustainability a policy would really help us a lot. It would also help save money that can instead go to students in the classroom. This will also help us recycle and reduce waste more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, trustees. Thank you for supporting our project. We are doing lots of work at Empire Elementary. At Empire, we're doing lots of work in Green Biscuits, and we hope you are considering making sustainability a policy at schools in Carson City. This will help schools make and save more money, and loads of that money could go into better education. This will also help the environment. This will help pollution and climate change too. So thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Yeah, I don't know if we got your name. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm Yesenia Avila.
Thank you. And thank both of you for being here and be willing to speak in front of the board. You guys did a very good job. Thank you again.
And Mr. President, I think that's just another example of 2 gifted students we have in this district. You know, nice writers, eloquent speakers, brave. Thanks for coming up. We're not so scary though. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very good job, guys. We'll go ahead and call for a vote now. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Cornick. And thank you, girls, again very much. And we hope to see you back again. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll go ahead and go back to agenda item number 7. Informational update on the Gifted and Academically Talented Education GATE program in the Carson City School District. And this is for discussion only, and Ms. Joanna Kaiser will be presenting. And
Okay, do I have to, okay, so you can hear me. This is awkward for me sitting while I'm presenting. Oh, I almost forgot. I made copies for you. Because I called Renee, and I love a good note taker. And this is on a Google Doc. So if Renee could email it to you, it has links embedded in it, because I took Google from Leanne Morris, so I know how to do cool Google stuff.
thank you, Joanna. Thank you.
So I wanted everybody to have a note taker in case you needed it. Then you can write questions on it. Okay, now I have to sit while I talk. Cheryl, that's going to be hard for me, but okay. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for all of you do for our teachers, our students, and our families. We so appreciate you. So thank you very much. And I saw AJ this morning when we were celebrating Adrian, and I said, I have 15 minutes, but I could talk for an hour and 15 minutes, but I've practiced and it's 15 minutes. So here we go. So do you want to just advance it? Oh, should I advance it with this? Oh, cool. I always like to start with a quote. I love all things inspiring in terms of children's literature. So I started with one of my third graders' favorite books, a quote. Well, this is a quote from the book, but it's the author, Madeline L'Engle, Wrinkle in Time, of course, for all of you children's literature lovers. Inspiration usually comes during work rather than before it. And that reminds me of our Gifted and Talented program, because as we're doing the work, we get inspired and we change things every year. We modify things. We are responsive to our community and our parents. And so we try to be inspired as we do the work. Thank you, Cheryl, for, I hope this is, oh, I have to point it there. Okay, and of course, this is an introduction. Cheryl and I, Cheryl Macy is, as you know, the Director of Equity, Curriculum Instruction, and also GATE now, which is exciting for me. I'm Joanna Kaiser, the GATE TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a product of Carson City Schools, class of '86. Cheryl's younger than me. She's a product of Carson City Schools too. And both of my daughters are products of Carson City Schools, so I so appreciate teachers here. And I love working and teaching in Carson City. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also nationally board certified in literacy, lifelong learner, GATE endorsed, master's in literacy too. So yeah, I love teaching and learning. I keep trying to point it there instead of there, Cheryl. Okay, here's a little overview, a little historical for perspective, differentiation in the cluster model, which is mainly what we do in Carson City, teaching with the end in mind. You'll see some kind of like our end game in the world of GATE, and research, not research, but Dr. Prader's evaluation of our program, and then questions and clarifications. I wanted to start with a quote. I'm a history buff, so I added, of course, a quote from Queen Elizabeth that you can peruse for yourself there. But the part I really liked was encouraging people at the end, when she talks about encouraging people to combine efforts, talents, insights, enthusiasm, and their inspiration to work together. And that just reminds me of our GREAT program, because we're always working together. And the historical perspective, years ago, about a decade ago, the Sue Kima, who at that time was the assistant superintendent, tasked Valerie Dockery, who was a new director, with modifying and changing how we do gifted and talented ed in Carson City. We were losing students to private schools. We were losing students to Washoe County. And Mrs. Kima wanted that to be rectified. So our GATE program today came from a problem a decade ago, and Valerie and Sue Kima, and now our current leadership support the GATE program. And this is going to give you a window into the GATE program now. Okay, here's a little why we do what we do. I'm definitely a why person. I always need a direction of why am I doing what I'm doing? And this has a couple quotes from one of the books we use for our gifted and talented coursework, which is Teaching Gifted Kids in Today's Classrooms. And a lot of people don't realize that students who tend to make the most growth in a year are our gifted and talented students. So that has a couple quotes from the book. And I'm gonna skip to the second one because I already kind of paraphrased the first one. So how does it happen that our gifted students tend to be the ones that make the least growth? Mostly it's because each year we are presented with our curriculum content. We feel intense pressure and responsibility to teach all the standards assigned to our grade level or subject. And for advanced learners, this creates a situation in which much of their school time is wasted on grade level work they have already mastered. So when I was in the classroom as a GATE teacher, if my kids were at the 99th percentile, my goal was to keep them at the 99th percentile, which is hard to do. So that's one of the reasons we developed our GATE program, because we were seeing advanced learners, GATE students, who weren't making growth because they didn't have trained teachers who knew how to differentiate for them. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so differentiation in the cluster model. In the world of GATE, if I was in charge of the world, not just in the world of GATE, but in the world of education, I would make sure every teacher in Carson City School District is GATE endorsed. We have about over 200 actually that are GATE endorsed, so we're on the path to do that. But the reason that's important to me is your GATE endorsement is all about differentiation. And if we ever get a complaint about the GATE program in Carson City, it's from parents who want their kids in the teacher's classroom who is GATE endorsed. And I love this quote because it's all about possibilities. And so for me, my end game is that every teacher in Carson City School District will be GATE endorsed because it's all about differentiation. So on the next slide, you're going to find thank you, Cheryl, a little bit about our cluster model. And it's really built on collective teacher efficacy. I'm a little bit of a research nerd. And if you look at student performance, the number one predictor of student performance, and this is from John Hattie, an educational researcher, is teacher collective efficacy. And that's what we do in the world of GATE. Oh, see, I am always ready with a plan B. I have this. That's why I gave you the note. Don't worry. Oh, okay. I always have a plan B because I'm old and have paper copies just in case I need it. But collective teacher efficacy is all about teachers being empowered because they're working together towards a common goal. And in the world of GATE, that's what we do with our GATE teachers. We make sure we provide an atmosphere where they are empowered. Okay. Now, if you had this as a Google Doc, you'll have a link to this document if you want Renee to send it to you. But basically, I snipped just a couple glimpses into the world of GATE. On one side, it shows our GATE PLCs, and these are our professional learning communities where I get to, one of them launches tomorrow, where I get to do professional learning with all our 50 GATE teachers that are in classrooms with GATE students. And like I said, it's the cluster model, which means they have a cluster of GATE students along with other students. I also teach 2 of the 4 courses towards a GATE endorsement. We have 20 new Carson City teachers taking those courses this year, and that just has a window into how we build that teacher collective efficacy. And we also follow, because those of you who are in the world of education know when you learn something new, you need to have some sort of accountability follow-up. So we do observations. I get to go out and observe all 50 GATE teachers after we do our GATE PLCs. And this is how I observe them with this document with differentiation based on content, process, product. So I get to observe all 50 teachers, and then I get to conference with all 50 teachers. And we do that twice a year. And again, there's a link to this document so you can peruse it at your leisure. So I don't run out of time, right, Cheryl? Okay, this just it's a snippet of the feedback we get from teachers. And again, if you've ever led professional learning for adults, they can be a rough crowd. They want to make sure, they don't want their time wasted. So this is one of our GATE PLC documents, and it shows you on the far end, it shows you how they rated the professional learning, which was facilitated by me, if they felt that their learning was enhanced, and then it gives a snip of some of their comments. So this was just one of our GATE PLCs, and I have 50 teachers ranging from 1st grade through 8th grade. So that's a wide range, and they're wonderful, like the fabulous Tanea. Oh, she left. Tanea left. Oh, good, Tanea's here. Okay, and on the next slide, this is my dream of extending the world of GATE to all teachers in Carson City. This was on our professional learning day, Lacey Carey and I, another GATE teacher, she and I got to present differentiation to a large group of teachers, not only GATE endorsed, but across the district. And again, you can see how teachers were rating it. And we were talking about differentiation. We were talking about using menus. We were talking about depth and complexity. So that just kind of shows how impactful the professional learning is for our teachers. And I get to facilitate that. And like I tell Cheryl, it's the favorite part of my job is working with teachers and the professional learning, because it's like being in the classroom again, except I get to work with adults, which I love too. This is just kind of a brief window because you hear that term cluster model. In a cluster model, and you'll see at the top, I'm not going to read all of this, of course, but we place our gifted students with average and below average. And then other classrooms have the high achieving students. The reason we do that is we don't want to place all of our GATE students and high achieving students in the same class because of difficulties with balancing the classes. But on the next slide, it kind of gives a why. The cluster model that we use in Carson City, these are some of the highlights. It raises achievement for all students. We want to have that class balance. And I highlighted this important part, clustering gifted students and high achieving students not identified as gifted in separate classrooms is a key component of the cluster model. Because again, it's about that balancing, so not one teacher doesn't get all the GATE and the high achieving students, because we need role models across all classrooms. This gives a window into Carson City School District has what we called a very inclusive view of giftedness. If you look at any other district across the state and nationwide, GATE programs tend to identify only 2% of the population. Carson City identifies 10. It might be a little over 10 if I remember right, but it tends to be about 10% of the student population. And if you are like me in the world of GATE, any criticism you see of GATE programs is when they're identifying only 2% of the population. We really want to identify as many students as we can, underrepresented groups. Last year, Tanya, Scott, and I did a video to all teachers when we had our GATE nomination process. So, I mean, to make sure everybody's included. We called it Giftedness Knows No Boundaries. We stole that name from NEGC because the National Association for Gifted Conference has that same, we didn't really steal it. We just liked what they called it. So we kind of highlighted that. So we have a very inclusive view of giftedness in Carson City.
Before you change it, can you
Yes.
why do we have such a drop off from like the junior year to
You
the
mean
senior year? Like
that it doesn't have any of our, that should have, okay. I can explain that. Thank you. Good question. I didn't even notice that. In Carson City, our cluster program goes from, we have young scholars. So at some schools we have first and second, and they get identified as second graders, and then that goes through 8th grade. At Carson High School, they are placed with some of our Carson High honors and AP class teachers are GATE endorsed, some of them aren't. So that's why we don't have as many GATE endorsed teachers. We don't have the cluster model at Carson High where students are placed with a GATE endorsed teacher.
because they have the opportunity to be in Jumpstart,
Honors,
and AP,
honors,
and
AP, Jumpstart. Yes, good question. I like your detail question. I'm a detail person. Okay, so I think we can, yeah. This, again, I included the GATE nomination packet, and we're all about you knowing all about our program. So if you go on the GATE website that the fabulous Dan Davis helped us do, I just used to have a bunch of papers, and then I went to Dan and he made it into a beautiful website. But it has all of this information on there, including our GATE nomination packet. This is the state form, and it shows you like that top one that says eligibility. The state qualifies gifted students on a cognitive score. And if you look at that, it tends to be, you have to be in the 90th percentile or higher on your whole scale test. Carson City, we take subtest scores because sometimes a student might have a high nonverbal score or they might have a high quantitative score and their complete score might not be high enough to qualify them, but we qualify based on a subtest. Now, but Nevada, the state of Nevada only gives us money for the top 2%. So our GATE, yeah, it's not like they're like, great, you identify 10%, we'll pay you for 10%. They don't pay us for the 10%. They pay us for the top 2%, but we always advocate to change that, and we'll continue to advocate for that more inclusive view of giftedness. Yes.
I guess my question is, when you look at the numbers, there's such a drop for Empire compared to all the other elementary schools. And then I'm looking at using the state's definition, and Empire has the same number or more than some of those schools who have more than double the identified students. And so I'm wondering if we've dug into that a little bit, because I'm concerned that we're missing something at that school.
Yes. And in fact, one of the things we've done with Empire, and this was under when Susan Squires was principal, we were very concerned about small clusters at Empire because so few students were being identified per grade level. So it's actually the only site we have a 3, 4, 5 classroom. And it's actually a gate immersion classroom. Well, kind of a gate immersion. It has some other students that might fit well in that class, but it was because the teachers were not able to differentiate because they had such small clusters. So we did move to a 3, 4, 5 because we were so concerned about equity at that site. But that's one of the things where we look at every year. How can we do things differently? And that's one of the things we look at. But that is one of the things we did to try to support the students more effectively. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm not sure exactly how that helped. I think it's an identification problem, and I'm wondering if the tools we're using might have some linguistic biases or cultural biases. That's my concern.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Walker, I'll be addressing that in my piece in just a minute.
Perfect. Okay. And this is our teaching with the end in mind. Of course, Hattie, again, John Hattie, that we're immediately, instead of do your best, we're changing our motto to face your challenges, strive to the highest. Our goals need to be, we want students that are self-energized, motivated, directed to be successful. Because we want our students to be the best version of themselves. And this is kind of the end where you're going to hear some of Dr. Perder's report, as well as some of the work we do with families to just kind of collectively work to support students. So go ahead, I think, yes. We've always had GATE Families Book Club and a GATE Parent Council. The book club typically meets 3 times a year. The GATE Parent Council typically meets 3 times a year. We're trying to modify that a little bit to include more people. But if you look on our website, you're going to see a parent resource page. You'll see a page on the nomination process. And these are the books most recently. All of those books were books that we've done the past several years. I've facilitated a GATE Families Book Club. Our newest one is on grit, but all the others are now in libraries across Carson City Schools because we try to support, like I said, not just our GATE families, but all families. We also have books on anxiety, perfectionism, again, at school libraries. So that just kind of shows how we try to support our parents and families. And then I think this is Cheryl from Dr. Perder's report.
Thank you, Joanna. And a big hearty thank you to Joanna, who does such a great job working with our teachers and providing them professional development. It is wildly appreciated by the teachers. And she's become an expert in our district on differentiation and supports teachers, even those who are not in our Teaching in the Gifted program. I'm going to talk a little bit about our yearly evaluation that is completed by Dr. Steve Perder. I got this a couple months ago, and I thought the best bet was to take it to our advisory committee, and we really dug into that, and we're looking at the data. And if you've had a chance to look at that, it looks really great. There's a lot of things to celebrate in that report. But what the advisory committee did is we looked at that data and compared it to the demographics in our district, and that is where we noticed a bit of a gap. It's still better than most districts, but there's definitely work to be done there. So, Mr. Walker, to address your question, one thing to consider is that Empire is a slightly smaller school, so that might look sometimes like, it might skew how that data looks. But we do know that we do not have an equal representation of Hispanic students and EL students in our GATE program. So our next step is to dive deeper into the data and look at what's happening with those GATE screeners and see if there might be something going on there. So right now I've been pulling together data of our EL students who scored in the 80 and 90th percentile on MAT tests and 3s and 4s on SBAC, and looking at whether or not they're GATE, and if they've been screened for GATE, they've been tested for GATE. I'm pulling some of their packets so that a committee can kind of dig into that and see, okay, what maybe was the deciding factor in here, and is there a consistent spot where some of our EL students are not making the qualification? So we're working on it to answer that question. So a key data point, we had 840 students served. That's a lot of students, and I think that's definitely celebration worthy. 99% of them met their projected growth in math, and 77 met their projected growth in reading. And if you've worked with gifted students, you know that can be really tricky, because when those kids are working in those upper higher percentiles, it can be hard to, move from the 98th percentile to the 99th percentile. We do want to look at our EL monitored students. We are looking at that, as I mentioned, and we are looking at identifying academic areas of concerns to identify curriculum, instruction, and assessment needs. So how can we better meet the needs of our gifted students? Yes.
Just on that last slide, and I think, it looks like the kids are all doing well, and these kids are, again, they're GATE students. They're doing quite well in general. But when I look at 77% meeting projected growth in reading, is that, I'm sure we want all our kids to be 99%, but from your perspective, and Joanne, your perspective, why is it so much lower than math, I guess? And what's our approach to try to stimulate them on the reading side to see if we can generate, higher growth?
We're actually going to start that tomorrow. Tomorrow's our first GATE PLC of the year, and this is just my guess. We had at the elementary level, we have the HMH reading program, and it can be where you're at its whole group. And if you're not differentiating, because something I've noticed, and it could have been because of COVID, we haven't had as many books from our GATE lending library checked out. And so I think my guess is that we're not having the students met at their Lexile level and challenged. And actually, when I've been out and about at schools this year, that's the #1 request for Joanna, come help me differentiate. These are my MAP scores. What books should I use? That's actually been the number one request. So I think teachers realize that even before they're going to see that number tomorrow at GATE PLCs when we talk about it. But that's my guess. Not a lot of our GATE teachers differentiate, and obviously, and a lot, but not with the new reading program. There were some things that we need to tweak just to make sure our GATE students are being challenged.
No, it might be too early, and if you don't have that now, that's okay. But do we know how that compares, both those growth percentages compared to, say, other schools in the States, or if you look, do we have any kind of comparisons?
Look up that data.
I'd be curious just how, I'm always interested in how we track with other districts and other states,
Yeah.
where it's comparable, if you will.
I know from having 2 daughters at University of Nevada, Reno, they say that Hannah, who's majoring in English, my oldest, says the teachers will say, I can tell you're from Carson High because you're such a good writer. So yeah.
Excuse me. This is the feedback that we got from our first advisory committee meeting. The strengths of the GATE program is our professional learning, which we've talked about already. The really effective family engagement that's been offered that has really targeted the needs of families and parents and guardians. And overall, the nomination process goes smoothly. There's not a lot of glitches there. Opportunities for improvement, increasing diversity, and expanding teacher capacity. And by that, we mean expanding these skills of differentiation, particularly the depth and complexity model, outside of the GATE program. because we know that those strategies work really well for all kids. In fact, I am GATE certified, but the last 4 years in the classroom, I did not teach GATE classes, and I use those strategies on a regular basis. I think they're good for all students. So our next step is to identify barriers to GATE enrollment, as we talked about, what's really kind of catching some of our EL and our EL exited students, to review strategies being used or not used, and so what really are teachers taking from the program and applying in their classroom. A deeper dive into demographic data and comparing that to state data. Tracking of GATE students and of those who didn't qualify. So there, we really are working with our students up through 8th grade, but we want to see where they end up as juniors and seniors, and then of course after high school. Are our GATE kids being served well and therefore ending up in college and university or trade schools, whatever they choose? And looking more into those reading scores.
Just on that note, it's lower than math, but 77% who met their growth goal is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I
it is
wish
phenomenal.
I had 77% of my students meeting their growth goal in reading.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I remember as a 3rd grade GATE cluster teacher back in the day, kids can read at those younger ages, but as they get pushed into the more complex texts, they don't always comprehend. There's foreshadowing and nuances that they just aren't experienced enough for yet. And so I think that that's also one of the things to consider is we just have to provide that scaffolding to give them that background. But then the higher level book you get, sometimes you don't want to scaffold that information at a young age. So
Yeah.
it's complex.
Yeah. And a lot of it, and our schools are so wonderful at sharing books, but sometimes teachers will say, my students, I want them to read this book and I'm borrowing it from one school, bringing it to another. But you're right, a lot of it has to do with content. It's not just Lexile, it's what's the content of the book and is it appropriate? Yeah.
Another next step that is not on here, but that Joanna and I have talked about quite a bit, is expanding the support offered to teachers into the high school level. We don't really look at classes as GATE or not GATE at the high school level because students self-select what classes they're taking. But we would like to reach out to Carson High School and Pioneer Academy and see if there are some supports that they would like to help their teachers that are still working with gifted students.
And we did purchase the depth and complexity books for Carson High for the GATE-endorsed teachers working towards that goal.
And this is a snapshot of what is on our webpage, so we encourage you to go check that out. And if you have any questions, please let Joanna and me know.
And then I think the last slide is just questions, but do you guys have any questions as you guys were?
Any other board questions?
Yeah.
Just a comment more
Go
than a
ahead.
question. I'm so impressed with how this program has been developed over the last 10 years. When my son, who's now in college, was identified as GATE in 3rd grade, he had a teacher who didn't have the GATE certification. And the differentiation wasn't what it is. We're kids. And I think I love the idea of expanding that professional development to all teachers, because every teacher I've talked to who's done the GATE certification has said it's made them a better teacher for all students. And I think that's the goal that we have in this district too, is that student-centered learning, which this focuses on the needs of these students, but it can be expanded to make sure we're meeting the needs of all students, because that's our goal as well. So I'm impressed with the program. I'm impressed with the changes, and just the state of Nevada, districts that do have GATE programs are looking at how they can make sure to identify more students, because the National Association of Gifted Students recommends that it's, or I read it and I might be misquoting, but you probably know it, but the 10% of the population is what they're saying is an accurate estimation of it. So the 2% is your very highly gifted, and this encompasses more kids, and these kids have needs as well, because sometimes you hear with gifted kids that they're going to succeed no matter what you do, and that is not always the case at all, because they have sometimes some barriers to their ability to challenge themselves and to focus themselves and to make sure that they can meet their greatest potential. So I'm happy that we offer this in our district. So thank you for all your work.
Yes, of course. Thank you all. And I just wanted to say, in that same vein, the Northwest Region classes we offer, where I teach the gate endorsement courses to teachers across Northern Nevada, all of them are always so impressed with our program. And some of them will be like, I'm going to bring this to my principal, and I'm going to start a cluster model at our site, because a lot of districts only identify the top 2%, and they might get pulled out 150 minutes a week, and that's it. And we always say a student isn't gifted only 150 minutes a week. So that's why we want every teacher to be gate endorsed and to be able to differentiate for everybody.
Mike, I think you had something.
You know, I was just going to piggy off what Laura was saying, because it's not only just the percentage, but there are other competencies that show a giftedness, leadership, artisticness. So, I mean, schools, it's challenging to find those ways. But I mean, I think as we look at our kids and get to know them, we need to really look for those signs, because sometimes they're outliers and they're still gifted, and they might not be gifted in that competency.
Exactly.
And I don't know, I don't have advice for you of how to do that.
Yeah.
I think all schools struggle with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Joe, I think you had something also, or? Oh, Lupe, I'm sorry.
Okay. So I just want to thank you for pointing out that you are looking into the reason why the disparities between the Caucasian and the Hispanic students are not participating in the GATE program. And I am wondering if it could be the language barrier. Maybe the parents are not aware or informed about these programs that their students may be eligible to participate in. So a suggestion would be to do a workshop or a meeting with those parents whose children may be candidates for this program. I think that would be one way to increase those numbers.
Yes, and we also do during our GATE nomination process, which always launches in January, we do a parent square, which of course is translated into both languages. But you're right, because parents can nominate their own child, teachers can nominate. We also look at the access scores. If they've made 1.5 or higher on access, they automatically have to be nominated. So, but I love that idea, because we never really have done that. We've done everybody gets notified about the nominations, the teachers are notified, the families, but there's always more ways. So thank you.
You bet, yeah. And we also have heard that, a lot of times the parents do not get to see everything on Parent Square, so that may be the reason why
Yeah.
they're not informed.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm also curious to find out how many of those students that are in the GATE program are going into a Jumpstart advanced placement courses. I'm curious to see how many of those students are heading that direction.
That's a great question, because we've never researched that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation.
Hey, thank you.
I think the GATE program, like I heard from one of my colleagues before, has really grown a lot in the last 10 years. I think we do have we have a lot of exceptional people in this district, and GATE's a fine example of that. And I think it's challenging for districts when you're trying to be all things for all students. You have high achieving students, you have struggling students, you have the vast majority kind of in the middle. And, and tapping into all of these students to help them be as successful as they can be is so critical. And I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing. I agree. I think teachers should get trained in GATE, just like they should get trained in, in all aspects of these things. And it's hard to do. There's only so many hours in a day. I get that. But the more we can do to give these teachers what they need to recognize these things. And I like the fact that we're not limiting ourselves to the 2%. We're opening it up, because there's no magic number as to who qualifies for what at what level.
Right.
We just have to meet the needs of these students.
Exactly.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We get asked a lot if when the testing, do they stay in after, if you make gate, do you stay in when you get in? Or does it just start, you get in on first grade and then if you come, like Angela's student comes in 8th grade, is he eligible to be gate?
Yes,
somebody that
we,
comes in
we
early?
actually, yes, we actually, we start testing with second graders, but we will retest up to 3, sometimes 4 times because parents and teachers will nominate. So any incoming students, we do that as part of our gate nomination process. It's not just, oh, you weren't in here in second grade, sorry, you missed, you missed it. No, we nominate every year.
Just a clarification on that, where we don't test is at the high school level because it doesn't affect placement.
So if a person didn't make it in first grade, they could be nominated in 4th grade?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we have some students nominated up to 3 times and then sometimes even 4 times. But it tends to be 3 tends to be the most, but sometimes 4.
Any other questions or comments?
I forgot to mention to the other subgroup that I noticed that we don't have a lot of participation is the American Indian students. I don't see very many students until up to the high school level. So I'm wondering, there is a liaison at
Aaron
the
Thacker.
high school, but not in the middle school or elementary school, correct, for Native Americans? Is that right? So I'm wondering if we are also not disseminating this information to their parents.
We can certainly look into that. We need to do a comparison to see how much it reflects our overall population, but we can certainly work on communicating that information.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, but I do have a quick question. We want the majority of teachers become GATE certified. What's involved in that process? How many hours does it take? Do they do it on school time? Do they have to do it on weekends, or what's the process?
We actually have partnered with Northwest Region, the professional development program, so we don't have to pay. We used to hire a contractor who would come in and teach the GATE courses on Saturdays. We offer them via Zoom on Thursday nights, so teachers, like, for example, we're teaching characteristics right now, so they're with Lacey and I every Thursday night from 4 to 8, and it's 45 hours for 3 graduate credits, and they take 12 graduate credits. Lacey and I teach 2 of the 4 classes, and then they have other teachers from the Northwest region teaching the other courses. But it takes about a year.
About a year?
It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
But they love it. Teachers love it. We get nothing but positive feedback. I could talk more about that too, but because we have lots of positives from that too, because we of course survey teachers and what do you like about it? What do you not like? And they actually like being on Zoom because teachers from all over the North can take the courses.
I appreciate it. A very good presentation. Thank you guys very much, and thank you for all your work you're doing, both of you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. And I guess you're up now. For your
You're up.
next
You
thing.
might as well stay there.
I get a good job.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 8, which is the update on the read by 3, or read by grade 3, and review of the CCSD local literacy plan. And this is for discussion only. And again, Cheryl Macy will be presenting. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, President Varner, members of the board, Mr. Fueling, for having me here tonight. I'm going to update you on our local literacy plan, which is the report that we create to articulate how we are following both the intent and the letter of the Read by Grade 3 laws. So just a little bit of history on Read by Grade 3. In 2015, SB 391 was passed with that focused on reading because it's a key predictor of school success and high school graduation, which makes sense, right? Because in most subjects you're reading. The goal was for all students reading on grade level by grade 3. The focus was on early reading instruction and intervention. That first set of laws focused on grades kindergarten through 3rd. And it included mandatory retention at grade 3 if a student was not reading at grade level. And you could choose to exempt students from that, but you had to consider retaining a child if they weren't reading at grade level by grade 3. And then in 2019, AB 289 was passed, and this there was a few big changes. One is it extended the scope all the way up to 5th grade, which makes sense because if a child's not reading by grade level at grade 3, you still want to make sure that you're helping that child catch up. It required a literacy specialist at each site. In Carson City School District, we have our coaches in the elementary schools who serve as our literacy specialists. Our coaches are high-quality education support staff. And they removed the mandatory grade 3 retention.
Just a quick question. When this law went into effect and required literary specialists, did they provide funding for those literary specialists?
That's a good question. Do you know, Tasha?
They didn't.
I can help you out with that, Mrs. Mason.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a long road with this one, actually. Initially, yes, there was. And then there wasn't. And then there was. And then with the move to the new funding model, the amount of state funding that was allocated for Read by 3 was, I believe it was cut in half. I want to say statewide there was about 50 million. It might be more than that. I don't recall the number, but it was then cut in half and then put into the larger PCFP pot. So it's not what it used to be, but there is some funding that's part of it, and then our hold harmless thing, it's not the same thing. But I don't know if that answers the question. You can ask me more.
I don't know. I'm just trying to make a point that when we have to have additional specialists, which are very good things to have at the school sites, that I think the legislature should also include funding for those.
Well, and the Department of Ed should keep the rubric so that we don't lose $1 million too.
No worries. So one thing I want to say about the NDE Read by Grade 3 team is that they are incredibly helpful and supportive. They are available to me at a single phone call. They'll hop on a Zoom and help me. They're just really great at answering questions and supporting the districts. This is their document just to kind of illustrate all the pieces that go into improving reading achievement. So the local literacy plan is broken into 4 sections: the literacy specialist requirements, the professional learning that's required, intervention services, and assessments. The first piece is the literacy specialists, and there were a number of components in this, but I had to demonstrate that we do have literacy specialists and that they are qualified for their job, and they are all extremely qualified for their work as literacy specialists. I do meet with them. My team and I meet with them on a monthly basis, which is really important. That's how we communicate all of the elements of the law, provide them with their professional learning. This is the professional learning that we are required to offer them: coaching, which they're currently being trained on now, dyslexia screening, which I'll talk about in a moment. They have to review the standards. They have to review resources provided by NDE. We are also to go over with them systemic structures and collaboration and the roles that they play at our sites. They are often those who deliver the professional learning regarding literacy. They support their grade level community of practices. This is what we have historically called PLCs. And they serve on their MTSS teams. This is our multi-tiered systems of support teams. So professional learning for teachers includes curriculum, and this will be offered through the proficiency scales. But with that having been said, a gap that we really need to fill is offering literacy instruction for our 4th and 5th grade teachers primarily. As with COVID, we're seeing more children needing those basic literacy skills that were missed during missed instruction. And as 4th and 5th grade teachers, that's not necessarily their skill set that they have honed over the years. So we are working on pulling together some professional development for those teachers to support their students. We will also be offering instruction around the thinking maps, which helps students think about the text that they're reading, AVID strategies, which have reading strategies included in them. Some of this professional learning is site-driven and some of it is insight-led, but some of it is offered through the district as well. The next piece of the local literacy plan is intervention. We have what we call ILPs, and these are for students who are reading at or below the 40th percentile on the MAP assessment. For simplicity, I didn't include this in here, but you can, and DE does allow for schools to consider other elements. If a student doesn't do well on the MAP assessment, for example, but they're performing very well on in-class assessments or teacher observation, you don't have to put them on an ILP, but you do have to document that. And that decision should not be made in isolation. And then for grades 4 through 5, we're looking at students who are scoring at levels 1 or 2 on the ELA SBAC assessment. So the ILP is focused on being data-driven, and it is reviewed regularly by coaches and administrators. And we need to have, by state law, under Read by Grade 3, a way to screen for dyslexia. We do not diagnose dyslexia, but we do screen for that. And we have a flow chart, which I'll go over with you in just a moment. The multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS, just fits very nicely with this structure. And our schools have differentiation blocks, so time each day or every other day, depending on how schools set it up, where they can offer students the differentiation or targeted instruction that they need. This is our flow chart for the dyslexia screener, and it pretty much articulates that we need to be providing some support for students before we even do the screening. And then once the screening happens, it articulates what kind of support the student needs. And then lastly is assessments. This piece of the LLP was pretty cut and dry because the assessments are required by law. We use the NWEA MAP assessment, the SBAC ELA for grades 4th and 5th. We do the Brigance screening. This is a kindergarten readiness assessment that's done in the first 45 days of school. And this is just informative for the teacher so that they know what their students can and maybe cannot do, maybe need a little bit more support on. And we're looking into some intermediary assessments to provide more information for teachers on how their students are doing so that they're not just getting that data, at those bigger benchmark times. And I have on here testing calendar because that's one of our pieces of evidence that we're following that piece of the law. I wanted to share some current data. So this is what we have to report out every year to the Read by Grade 3 team of NDE, which is what percentage of our 3rd graders are needing ILPs or reading at the 40th percentile or fewer. And as you can see, that number was going down and then has gone up. So we did see a little drop between 2020-21 school year and 2021-22 school year. We haven't collected that data from this year yet because, we're not ready to identify exactly what our numbers are. Students are still being identified, but we clearly have some work to do. And I wanted to share this with you. This is our SBAC data overall for schools. And again, I think it's just important to review this data, and it shows that there are some things that are going well, but we still have some work to do in terms of providing reading instruction to our students. I guess that's it. Any questions?
Mike, go ahead.
I'm wondering about when you say you're exploring intermediary assessments, that's the number one thing that I hear teachers complain about is they're always assessing. I haven't heard it this year, but that is one of the things. So I just worry, how often are you talking? What is that going to encompass? Because the more time we assess students, the less time we have to actually teach them. And so I think it's a balancing act.
I agree. And what we're hoping is that there might be assessments that we're already using that we can use more effectively in terms of reviewing and helping that drive instruction. It's a good point. This is all school, all grades.
All grades.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So for the school, it's this is the SBAC ELA data for all grades. Okay.
Sorry, I say all grades, but that's fourth and fifth.
Okay.
right?
Any other, Joe?
Cheryl, thank you. I guess I'm curious, I mean, obviously this is an important endeavor. It was important enough to become law. And I think we're doing a great job. And I know we're, like in most cases, we're underfinanced to do a lot of this. I'm wondering, do we have data that even goes back past 2018 to see how are kids doing? And forgive me if I'm not using the right terminology, but when I think about success and growth, reading by grade 3, if you will, how is that tracking, say, over the last 10 years? What benefit are we seeing? What kind of strides are we seeing as a result of this, bringing us to current date? And the reason I say back 10 years is because I know COVID had a factor in this thing, and we're a couple years out, but we still, need to see how we track. But how are we doing over the last 10 years? I mean, we're working people such as yourself and administrators and teachers. We're putting a lot on their plate, and I just want to make sure, that we're seeing results from this. I know it's state-driven, but I'd still like to see what kind of results we're getting.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, is that maybe something that we need to do is really look at how we're implementing some of these strategies and getting feedback from teachers on how we might be able to shift some of our practices within those structures to make it more beneficial for them. I don't have off the top of my head, I'm sorry, data from 10 years ago. I think that's a good question and it's worth looking into. It is really hard when you look at the set of data because you know that there was, a worldwide crisis in the middle of that. But with that having been said, we can't have 45% of our third graders not reading at grade level. So we have some work to do for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't expect you to have that number off the top of your head, obviously, but I think in a future presentation, I'd love to see something like that, kind of an AJ Fueling graph or something,
Got it.
It would just be helpful for somebody who's not in education every day to kind of see how this is tracking. And when we think about lobbying and whatnot, and kind of holding our lawmakers accountable too, how are we doing as not just a district, but as a state?
With the same assessment?
I'd be looking.
Go back to when the SBAC started, because it changes.
It changes,
'cause I
and
was
that's the hard
think-
thing. It's hard to track this
That-
stuff, but
That's what I was thinking. 10 years ago, they weren't doing SBAC. They were doing.
yeah, but we still have
the
data
other-
on things, and I guess I'd be looking for advice on how to do that. But I think we could see some kind of pattern, or how are these kids doing?
I think we could pull map data for sure for third grade.
We should probably use asterisks too as we go along with COVID, because
And just remind ourselves too that it may take more than a couple years for these changes to be seen, that these kids there's gonna be effects that some of these test results aren't gonna be very reliable for quite a few years.
Any other comments or questions? I just have a quick one. When this law first, read by grade 3 first came into effect, there was a lot of, I guess, teachers complaining about the extra work that it was taken to track and I think they called them the purple folders at the time. Has that process been simplified to take some of the work off the teachers, or is it still kind of a intensive type thing to track?
Well, I want to be realistic and honest with my answer. Yes, in many respects, it has been simplified in that a lot of our schools are now, instead of using purple folders, they're using a digital system for tracking. that is accessible to all the appropriate parties. So if you have an interventionist who's pulling out a child to work with them, they don't have to worry about papers. They can go right to the slideshow that has the student's data in it. I think we probably, we have a lot of great things going on in schools. I think we could work on making sure that we're getting quality traction from the interventions that are taking place. And I think what we really need more than anything is input from teachers on what they see as effective and not effective. And we have an ELA advisory committee that is really, they're just a great team, and they provide outstanding feedback to me and to the ELA coordinator, Ms. Wallace, on what's working and what's not working, and we've been discussing these issues.
Seeing no further comments, I'd just like to thank you for the work you're doing. You're doing a great job, and hopefully we can get more kids reading at the grade level. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank all the teachers that are doing the work also.
Yes, big hearty thank you to all those teachers out there.
Okay, thank you again. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 10, which is discussion and possible action to modify projects in the fiscal year 2023-2027 Carson City School District Capital Improvement Program. And this is for possible action, and Superintendent Fueling will be presenting.
Thank you, President Varner. Good evening again, trustees. This item is, it's a little bit of a timing issue, why it's coming to you this evening. So over the past several years, Blair Roman, as you know, our athletic director, has brought to my attention the needs and some of the issues out on specifically the baseball infield, and then otherwise kind of in and around that complex area of the baseball and softball fields. And while we are starting the facilities master planning process, it's likely that that process won't really come to a conclusion of which projects we're going to be looking at bringing it to you for approval until February. And so given the timing of when the baseball season, softball season start in the spring, that wouldn't be enough time to maybe take care of some of these projects and improvements. I asked Mr. Roman if he could be here this evening to speak to this, and as you know, he's a pretty busy guy. And so he couldn't, but he did put together a little explanation of the request and the need. So I'll just read that to you now. Thank you for the opportunity to express our need for the baseball and softball infield projects at Carson High School for the capital improvement plan. As some of you know, our baseball facility has been and continues to be one of the nicest high school facilities in the state of Nevada. In maintaining that facility, countless hours and significant expense are dedicated to the maintenance of the field by our coaches, grounds department, and athletic department. At the current time, the varsity baseball infield is in dire need of a complete reconstruction. This has never been done since the field was constructed in 1974. That is a 48-year time period in which maintenance has been performed on it, but over that time, the field has sunk in some spots and shifted in others and has severe drainage issues. It is no longer feasible to nurse the infield playing surface to allow for an acceptable and safe surface. The severe drainage issues in the entire complex, in part caused by the drainage problems on the current infield in the winter, as rain and snow melt, causes major obstacles to prepare the field for practice and games. Recently, the entire baseball field's irrigation system was finally replaced. That also dated back to the 1970s, because this new irrigation system is in place now, and is a tremendous upgrade. The severe issues of drainage in the infield will work against the ability of this project to enhance the field like it should. The reconstruction of the infield will help solve the irrigation and drainage issues. It is a complete renewal of an excellent 48-year-old facility that is long overdue for an overhaul, provide better safety of play, and allow for the irrigation project completed last summer to work as it is designed. As for the softball infields, the scope of those needs are less. However, a safe playable surface is extremely important for a fast-moving game on a smaller diamond that it is played on. This is essential to provide an adequate playing surface. Both softball infields and at Carson High School require enhanced maintenance above the normal seasonal work that would bring them to acceptable standard, particularly the JV field. Thank you for your time and consideration. Blair Roman, Cody Farmworth, and Brian Manukian, who's our head baseball coach. So it just to give you an idea, and again, it's this is something that would have normally just gone through the facilities master planning process, but just given the timing of the seasons, that if it were approved to make this change tonight, it would effectively give budget authority immediately so that they can work on. Well, there already are some quotes that they have had previously, but get some updated quotes on some of these improvements and be able to use those funds so that it will be ready in the spring. What you have attached as supporting documentation would be the revised capital improvement plan. I apologize for the small font, but what I would note is that the change is under Carson High School. You'll notice it says baseball, softball field improvement at $100,000. So that was not a line on the capital improvement plan that was approved in May. And that $100,000 comes directly from just above that under the district-wide cycle. The larger line of district-wide major maintenance, that was $4.9 million in May, and so that's just been reduced to 4.8. So the district-wide major maintenance projects, or district-wide major maintenance, that is truly money that will be available to the Facilities Master Plan Committee as they start recommending projects to move forward with, potentially more funds if we would bond again in the future, and we're still getting some final numbers from Marty Johnson on that. But this is just, again, just an item to take care of that sports field issue here in a timely fashion for the coming season.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Mike? Sorry. Then Stacy.
I'm just wondering, AJ, I mean, looking at this, it's the upgrades to the high school are more than what we just did with Eagle Valley. So, I mean, is it justified? Is it necessary? I'm just trying to be cautious in this environment right now. I'm wondering, are we spending money we don't need to spend yet?
Sure. And so one thing to remember, Trustee Walker, so while the Eagle Valley comparison, in total, that project was about $14 million. This $1 million represents kind of those final expenditures after July 1st in this new fiscal year. So it was just giving authority for that portion. As to the concern of the necessity, I think baseball is I guess in softball too, but they're the only sports where they effectively have to maintain their own fields. That's something that the coaches will do over time. And while that certainly makes a difference, I think the fact that it's been almost 50 years since there was a significant work done in that field, just to re-level and resurface and kind of make some safety improvements around the edges of the lips that happen on the grass and the dirt, will be a bit of a safety improvement for them. I'll note, we actually got a quote on this for turf, because there are a lot of baseball fields, even high school fields now, that are moving completely to turf. And so the company that came to do the football field, which ended up being close to $900,000 last summer, we asked them for a quote on the baseball field just to get it. It was something like $2.2 million. And I thought there was a mistake, because in my mind, that's not the same size as a football field. And what it comes down to is there's a lot of work kind of around the field and with the fencing and what has to be pulled out and put back in. It ends up I think being a lot more labor than the football field is. So So yeah, I understand the concern. I think from a safety aspect and just from a long range kind of recognition of the use of that field over the years, it's probably not unreasonable. And also hopefully helping some of the softball surfaces and some of the cages that they have back in those areas, just taking care of some improvements otherwise around there.
Just a clarifying question. It's only the baseball and softball fields improvements that are being added to what we approved previously?
Correct.
Okay, and then the district-wide major maintenance, was that 4.9, then now 4.8? Was that what we set aside for the Snyder property?
Yeah.
Possibly? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And that, I don't exactly remember why I did it like this, but between fiscal 23 and fiscal 24, that Snyder property piece, I think when we originally budgeted for it, it was the purchase price plus some upgrades and then expecting that the upgrades would continue into the next year. So trying to spread some of that cost out. But ultimately there's 6.2 million there that's still available, or would have been available for that project. And so it's taking 100,000 away from that to put it towards the fields there.
Stacy, go ahead.
So just to piggyback on that then, you're talking about that $4.8 million now going to the facility master plan committee to figure out where it's gonna go, but it's budgeted for this year and the fiscal year ends in June. So
Correct.
you're not gonna be able to spend this,
Right.
4.9
Yeah.
or 4.8 million.
It's likely that most of that 4.8 million will not be spent this year just because of that timing again. So I would assume that facilities master plan, based on what I remember from last time, I know it took many months to get through it. I don't think it didn't take an entire school year, but I think there were probably 4 to 5 meetings before a final list was put together, and then brought to the board for approval. I forget exactly how that timed out. I feel like we brought it with the tentative budget in April of that year after all that work had been done, and then that was approved as a part of a tentative, and we carried it through. But yeah, it's likely that the projects for this summer, at least like late spring and this summer, are going to be the projects you already see here. And that 4.8 million then will carry forward into the next year. And that's when Mark Johnson will start and Mark Hornick will start doing the planning of those projects and kind of how we'll order them out by priority.
Okay. We also talked about when Eagle Valley finished, we actually came under budget, correct?
So
Well, we were over, but then.
yeah, the project, I mean, it kind of, I guess it depends how you look at it. So from what the original price tag was, it came in over budget there, but in terms of what the final number we set aside, it's going to come in a little under budget, but it's still a lot of money. It's still about 14 million.
But some of that cost could go, or the savings could go.
Yeah,
Too, because I mean,
true.
even if you took 20,000, if we saved 50,000,
Sure.
that could be there too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And some of the, we're still going to be getting an updated quote on the Carson High re-roof. The locker room remodel, that as well, I don't believe that will actually, I don't think we're expecting that to come in at $500,000. That was just a number set aside. So there's potentially savings there. The other thing that is available to us, the last time Marty Johnson, the last time he put together projections for us, we were looking at some time, I think in 2025, I think it was, that there would be, and maybe it's 2024, that there might be up to like another $20 million available. And actually that was including some money that would be available as pay-as-you-go money. If you remember, within the debt service fund, if there's enough revenue to cover, more than enough revenue to cover half of the costs of whatever we have to pay for debt service that year, that money can become available. We can transfer it to the capital projects fund, and that becomes available for capital projects. So that's another avenue too. And I guess just the circumstance, if that $100,000 for some reason became really important in terms of another immediate project that came up, we would have the ability to transfer some funds from the debt service fund to the capital projects fund to cover some additional costs. So that there are some other options we have as well.
Joe, go ahead.
AJ, thanks for the presentation. I mean, I think 48 years is a long time, and that's kind of the poster child for deferred maintenance. And I know the coaches and staff have been doing their best, and I appreciate what they're doing. I would just caution you, and you mentioned it, that they were going to get revised cost estimates, because in my day job, I am seeing costs from a year ago go up 300-400%. It's shocking. And so even if a budget is 6 months old, it's worth getting another estimate on it, because the speed of escalation is just more than anybody can keep up with. So I'd hate for us to think it's going to be 100 or 120,000 and it winds up being 250. So just from what I've been seeing, I would just, and this isn't anything that Mark and Mark Cornick and Mark Johnson don't know, but just a word of caution.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I still don't understand how the baseball field got neglected when that's the one sport where we've had all-stars and major league players. How did we not get $100,000 from Matt or Kerrfield or any of those guys?
I reached out to my good friend Matt Williams and asked him, but he just didn't seem like he was willing to. No, I don't know. I don't.
That's how they became all-stars. We made them run uphill and jump over divots.
And it actually went Wilkie Williams in the graduation.
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Maybe you should contact him. I was just going to say too, I'm thinking of some of the maintenance, and a few years ago, we had several different maintenance projects at other sites, and Carson High deferred some of their maintenance. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with the baseball field, so I'm going to make a motion if you guys are okay. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the modified projects in the Capital Improvement Plan, CIP, for fiscal years 2023 to 2027.
We have a motion and a second. Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any public comment reference the motion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I think Blair was going to give everybody a hug or something like that. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 11, the annual review of the manner in which the statewide performance evaluation system for teachers and administrators is carried out in the Carson City School District as required by NRS 391.485-2, and it's for discussion only, and Associate Superintendent Dan Sadler will be making the presentation.
Hello, good evening, President Varner, members of the board. Dan Sadler for the record. Excuse me. And as a baseball fan, the Dodgers are up 5-1. Tough crowd for the Giants here. Broncos and Dodgers, yeah. All right, so here to just provide an update and overview on NEPF. I'm not going to go through every single little detail of it. So as Trustee Varner said, per NRS, we do an annual review, and I just had a couple weeks ago completed a review with NDE. Tina and Kat from NDE worked with Mary Prey and myself to go through some of the slides that I'm going to share with you here this evening. So thank you to Tina, who's here tonight as well, for sharing that information with us. And there's also some survey information that NDE shared with us that we're going to take a look at with our administrators that I think will be really helpful. And then eventually I'll have administrators share that with their teachers, because that's a different look through the lens of data that we really haven't been looking at at a large scale as a school district. So just kind of a refresher with NEPF, the Nevada Educators Performance Framework. It's a cyclical process that we work through teacher evaluation. So starts with the teacher self-assessment. We do a pre-evaluation conference, goal setting, plan developments. We go into plan implementation where administrators are observing, providing feedback through conferences, and reviewing evidence. We do a mid-cycle review, which is kind of a time to reflect on evidence that's been collected so far and how we're doing with the SLG, how that goal is looking, if we need to make adjustments. And then at the completion of that process, summative evaluation through the post-evaluation conference. The data that I'll be highlighting tonight for you is focused on last year's evaluation. So last year, there was no SLG, that's the student learning goal. So that was not something that was factored into the evaluation mathematically. Last year, we had 80% of instructional practice and 20% for professional responsibilities. Carson City School District did keep SLGs in practice last year as an agreement through the associations in the school district to keep up on that process. I think anytime we start talking about SLGs, then we start, there's some different interpretations of, well, why are we, like last year as a good example, the state said there's no SLG in the score. So it was interpreted initially like, yay, we don't have to focus on SLGs for this year. And then as a district, we kept that in place as a good practice, but it did not impact the scoring. So when I present that data to you tonight, keep that in mind that SLGs were not factored into it last school year. And then as far as overall score ranges, we're looking, and 3.6 to 4.0 would be the highly effective range, 2.8 to 3.59 is effective. If we had 1.91 to 2.79, that would be developing, and 1.0 to 1.9 would be ineffective. Specific to when the SLG is scored, again, this is just some language from the state. Educators must demonstrate an SLG score of a 2, 3, or 4 to be eligible to receive an effective summative rating. So again, last year there was no SLG, but it's important for thinking about this school year that in order to score an effective range, you have to receive a 2, 3, or a 4 on that SLG, and then a 3 or a 4 for it to be highly effective. And so again, thanks to NDE for the breakdown. We'll take a look first at our school district, and you can see we don't have audiologists in our district, so we did not have data represented there. And then as we go down the list, you can see that we have school administrators, total of 24, 14 school counselors, 6 school nurse, 5 school psychologists, 11 social workers, 10 speech pathologists, and 3 teacher librarians. And each of these categories has its own edition of the NEPF, if you will, so that it's not the same standards that we're working across the board. So when you look at school counselor, for example, those are built on different standards than the teacher evaluation system, which are different than the administrator standards. But the scoring system is the same. So as you move across to the right there, you'll see that we had 0 ineffective district-wide. We had a total of 1 social worker and 11 teachers that were developing, so a total of 12. As we move further down into effective, you see that there's a large percentage of all of our groups there that were in the effective range, and then also a lot of numbers represented in the highly effective range. The little asterisk there represents a class size ratio adjustment. So last school year, this was actually, I gotta look at my notes here so I don't quote it incorrectly. Pardon me 1 second. So AB 266 gave us guidance for adjusting post-probationary teachers' ratings with an additional weight related to class size ratios. And so I'll do a little bit of explanation on that, but just so you know what you're looking at with the asterisks, the original number there, let's look at the teacher group, was 252. And then with the class size adjustment ratio, there were 2 teachers' scores that actually increased to highly effective. So you'll see that number represented as highly effective. That number went from 104 to 106. And then on the far right side there, you'll see effective or higher our percentages as a district. This is a slide representing what I was just highlighting there with the class size adjustment. So grades K through 3, 15 pupils per one licensed teacher. That's not saying that that's the maximum class size. That's just the cap for the adjustment ratio. So if there were more than 15 students per one licensed teacher, or in grades 4 through 12, 25 pupils per one licensed teacher, that those teachers were eligible for an adjustment in specific standards that are listed here and indicators. There are a couple of exceptions to that depending on subjects. I know off the top of my head, like music teachers, choir band, and orchestra, that because of the numbers of their classes, it's not represented the same way. And so this is a breakdown of, again, our district, but representing the specific number in an average. So if we look at the school administrator column, you can see that 3.57 is the average there, and that's the highest instructional practice standard. So 2 on the side of that number is representing which one it was. So that's saying that 3.57 was the highest number and that was for instructional practice standard 2. And then the lowest for administrators there are 3.25 as we move across. And just kind of showing the metrics there on the far right side, you can kind of see some adjustments that are made from 2020 to 2021 to this last school year, kind of the change there. And there's some small gains and some small declines in areas, but this is really good information as we consider site professional development. And this, if we look at the administrator's lowest column at 3.25 is still a really good score, like that's in the effective range. But why is that different than what it is for the highest, with being standard 2? So we would take a look at standard 4 and see what work we might want to do in that area as a team of administrators to see to build that up. And the same could be said for any of these. Again, these are really good data points across the board, but when we have a score that's lower than others, that's something we want to dig in a little bit deeper. And that'll be really good information, especially as we start looking at the survey data from the administrators and the teachers, and kind of some of the correlations that we see to specific instructional or professional responsibility standards and some of the perceptions that are from those groups as well. So this is just spelling out for you exactly what I had listed there. So as an example, again, school administrators, the highest being standard 2. I just highlighted what that was. So creating and sustaining a culture of continuous improvement being the highest for the administrators and the highest for the teachers. Their learning tasks have high cognitive demand for diverse learners. And again, still in the effective range with administrators, standard 4 being the lowest, creating and sustaining structures. And for teachers, students engage in metacognitive activity to increase understanding and responsibility for their own learning. And these are highlighting, again, the highest and lowest indicators for the professional responsibilities. Again, keeping in mind last year we had 80% instructional, 20% professional responsibilities. These were factored into a lower percentage overall, but still important for us as we go through it. Huge celebration there with the student perception for teachers being a 3.72. We love to see that. And then again, thanks to NDE for providing this information. This was a look kind of statewide. So the initial data that I shared with you being our district, it's interesting as we take a look statewide, the percentage of teachers all the way up through audiologists at the top, what percentage are ineffective through highly effective. Anything in the right-hand column that's exempt, that represents somebody that for 2 years consecutively had been highly effective, which exempts them from the overall rating. We still go through the process of evaluation and providing feedback, but it's exempted due to the fact that it's been highly effective for 2 years.
Dan, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What does that mean? and I apologize for asking an ignorant question, but if a teacher got highly effective last year, what does it mean by, how does the exempt piece work?
2 years in a row.
So if
But
you
they still
get,
get evaluated this year, and most teachers I've spoken to that say, I went through the process last year and I was highly effective, I'm still being evaluated this year.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing is they don't see a big difference in this. And I'm just confused, I don't understand it.
So my experience as a principal and going through that was that a teacher or administrator 2 years is highly effective. They are exempt for the following school year, but we're still required to provide feedback to them and go through the process of evaluation. I would say it's much less intensive compared to certainly like a first-year probationary teacher, but it's still important that everybody's getting feedback and support. And then at the end of that evaluation cycle, it's not scored. There's some different forms that are completed at the end of that process, so it's not represented in a score.
It's 1 year or 2 years, say, is highly effective?
2
That
years.
you get a pass, okay.
2 years.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. So the SLG makes a return this year. You will see the breakdown that we have 85% educational practice, which is then further broken down 65% for the instructional standards, 20% for the professional responsibility standards, and then 15% of that will be represented student progress and growth and proficiency targets, which are set by educators in conjunction with their evaluating administrators. So overall scores this year, again, 85% educational practice and 15% student performance or SLG. So I'll see if we have any questions based on what I presented here so
Any
far.
questions from the board or any comments? Seeing none, I'll ask one.
Yes, sir.
If we have, I'm glad to see we have no ineffective teachers in the district right now. But on a developing teacher, are they given extra guidance or instructions or monitoring, or are they suited up with a more experienced teacher? How do we help them develop?
That's an excellent question, and I might ask you to define developing, because as a school administrator, if I'm supporting a developing teacher, it could be that we have somebody who's just a recent college graduate, they're brand new. Could be somebody who's alternative routes to licensure. Could be somebody who even is a veteran educator, but they're struggling for different reasons. So I think we're all developing first and foremost. I would say, as educators, we're always developing, and even my own experience as a classroom teacher and an administrator, I might be at a certain level one year, and the next year it's just different. I have different students. I'm in a different place myself, and I think something that I'm really proud of with our district is that we have some really good supports and some great people supporting built in. So that starts for our new educators with previously Carrie Pryor, now Mary Prey, and our site mentors, and trying to really work to understand what the needs of our teachers are, specifically for our new educators, and then trying to differentiate ways to support those people, because we have people who are new to our district. Maybe they've been teaching 15 years in California, but they're going to be a first-year probationary teacher in Nevada, and it's a new process, new standards, new tools, new school, so that's going to look a little bit different. When we have a teacher who's been observed and there's some feedback, and they're going through the evaluation process that might be struggling, then there's some tools available through the NAPF to provide a plan of assistance for that teacher. And that plan of assistance is really designed to identify areas for growth and areas to provide support during the evaluation process. My experience with the plan of assistance has been very positive in that as an evaluating administrator, I was able to address a concern, provide feedback, provide support, and get through that process that rather than somebody who may have scored at a lower level on the NAPF, they were able to score very well on that because they got the support that was needed through the process.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I wanted to hear. I'm glad that we have a plan of assistance to help these teachers develop into the teachers we want them to be. Thank you for the answer. I have just one other one. On the evaluation process, realistically, is it a true measure of the performance of the teacher? Because I know that you have two or three unannounced visits or observations, and you have one or two planned observations. So in reality, it's a very small period of time that the teacher is actually observed. So I'm just kind of getting your opinion on that, I guess.
It's a good question, and first and foremost, there are some expectations that are laid out by NAPF as far as minimum requirements. So that minimum requirement for an experienced educator who's post-probationary could be one evaluation cycle, and that could be the limit, or all that, I shouldn't say the limit, that all that's really put into the evaluation is that one formal pre-conference observation, post-conference, and maybe there's enough evidence presented through that process to where that teacher and an administrator are in agreement that we're good and we're moving forward and this is the feedback and yay. And I should take a step back to say the mid-cycle review kind of presents a good opportunity for administrators to meet with teachers to say, as a kind of a check-in, to say, here's what I have so far through the process. And that's a good point in time to go back, say, I need to come back and observe some more because I don't have enough evidence to support. Because sometimes it's based on the timing of the administrator and when they're available to do the observation or what the teacher's doing at the time when we stop by. Often there's conversations about, well, I did this really good formative assessment yesterday, but today we're taking the summative assessment. So the observation is students taking a test. And I think our administrators are very open to that conversation, say what's a good time to come back, and not trying to just pop in and surprise people, but we want to see that the best teaching that's taking place. And I think we often need to rely on our teachers to point us in the right direction as far as when they want to be observed, what they want specific feedback on. As an evaluating administrator myself, it was often challenging to give feedback in 5 different instructional areas and have the teacher walk away from that conversation with one tangible item of feedback to focus on. So trying to break that down into tangible bits, both for the collection of evidence and also specifically for that feedback for teachers becomes very important. I also think like classroom teaching it's dynamic and it changes. So I know when we were first being trained on NEPF, I had to think of it as, well, I need to observe all 5 of these instructional standards every single class period. Well, that's not realistic. A lesson for a teacher might be one day, and maybe they have everything that we could collect evidence on in that one day. So for that one teacher, maybe that observation is suffice. Whereas another teacher might plan a lesson that takes 3 days or 5 days or 10 days to show all areas. And so I think it's important that evaluating administrators and teachers are communicating and that it's a collaborative process, much more so than something that's just done to teachers. It really needs to be collaborative.
Yeah, and I know it's hard for the administrators because they got a lot of teachers and they have a lot of other things to do on top of the evaluation. So I think they do a really good job. But thank you for your answer. Any other comments or questions, Mike?
I just want to stress before we get a million emails from teachers that Mr. Sadler alluded to, but specifically, a 2 isn't a bad thing when you look at a teacher evaluation. If you really look at those rubrics, if you're breathing, it's hard to get a 1, and unless you're super fantastic and dynamic and leading a million things in the school, it's hard to get a 4. Most teachers are really naturally in that 2 to 3 range, and they really have to stretch to get into that 4 range. And so it's not always that somebody's underperforming if they get a 2. It's just that in that competency, they hadn't developed that evidence or it wasn't seen. And so I think that when you really look at NEPF, it's a great conversation it's designed to be a great conversation between the teacher and the administrator, a discussion about teaching and learning and how it's implemented in a classroom. I think where the state has really done us wrong is tying test scores to teacher evaluations, because teachers can't control how students take those tests, how seriously they take them. And during times like COVID, there's a million things which have impacted those scores. And so I think that, you know, NDE in the state is kind of backing off a little bit, whereas it used to be you had to use map data and whatnot. And, you know, I met with Tina and a group in Lyon County, and really it's refreshing to hear, have your teachers pick one standard and develop an assessment. And it's not necessarily tied to standardized test scores, which are very complicated, and teachers don't know what the questions are going to be, how they're going to be asked. And so it's unfair to use that to assess your effectiveness as an instructor. So I'm hoping, I think that lowering the percentage and some of the changes that we've seen are really helping. But all in all, it should be a conversation about teaching and learning.
Thank you. And when I alluded to the developing teachers, in my mind, I was thinking the newer teachers, you know, what kind of support system we had in place for them. Not that they were underperforming, but just they're still developing their skills, you know, and they're not a highly rated teacher yet, for lack of a better term, I guess. But
Well, and similar to what Mike was, you know, like a 2 is not a bad score if it's accurate, like, and that it is what it is, and that could be a growth point, like, you know, and that can be very helpful in deciding future goals. Plan of assistance, excuse me, is not a negative thing either. Like, that's a tool we use to provide support. And I'm highlighting this from the administrative perspective because of my experience as a middle school principal, but the same goes for our principals and their evaluation. If there's deficiency, and it could even be a request from the principals to specifically focus on something, like a plan of assistance is a tool we can use to provide that assistance in a way that also holds the evaluating administrator accountable to provide the assistance.
yeah, I think overall our teachers do a great job, and administrators are doing a great job, and I'm very happy. Any other comments or questions from the board? Joe?
I'll just add to it. I think one of our big successes in this is the collaboration piece. I think when I talk to teachers that are going through this process, especially the ones on the, say, the high achieving level, you know, the highly effective level, it's those teachers that work super hard, it's devastating to them if they don't get rated highly effective, and I get that. And the last thing we want to do is discourage teachers from, you know, last thing we want to do is discourage teachers. And so I think that ability to collaborate and, you know, and because it's an extensive process, it takes these teachers at that level a long time. It's not just an attitude to prepare, it's an ongoing thing. What's that? It takes the administrators a long time too, and the same goes with them. But I like the idea that they get to collaborate and they get to, you know, look at that and discuss it, and maybe it changes a rating, maybe it doesn't. But I think that collaboration piece, for me, is probably one of the bigger successes we have there. And so I'm glad we have it.
It is, and I guess I can share my kind of story from last year because my evaluating administrator gave me feedback throughout and then kind of came up with some preliminary scoring as a mid-cycle review, and I was sitting at a 3.59 personally, and I'm like, oh, that's so close to highly effective if I can get to a 3.60. But then as I went back through everything, it was accurate information. Like I didn't have any points to argue because the feedback that I had been given was accurate, and I felt it was a fair process. And I think that's really important, is that we keep that open dialogue throughout the process and keep it as something where it's communicating and collaborating.
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned the administrators. I know that sometimes when they're doing an observation, they may not be able to stay the whole time either. They get called out for some of the reasons, so they have to reschedule. So it's a process, and maybe not always a very smooth process. But any other questions or comments? Seeing none, this was for discussion only. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good.
Thank you.
I get a compare you to the, I don't know what, 3, 4 other times I've sat through similar presentations.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and move on to.
That was good. I thought that was good. Nice job. 3.99.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 12 now. Discussion of possible action to designate critical labor shortages for substitute teachers, substitute school nurses, and substitute custodians as allowed under NRS 286.523. This is for possible action, and Superintendent Fueling will be presenting.
Thank you, President Varner. I'll try to keep this in just simplest terms. It seems strange to be requesting this designation when substitute positions are not a part of PERS. They're not benefited positions. What we learned is that if you declare these positions critical shortage, the key is under normal circumstances, there is a 90-day waiting period from the point of retirement until when they can come back and be a substitute in the district. By declaring these substitute positions as critical shortage, it eliminates that 90-day waiting period. That's the bottom line, really, when it comes down to the reason for this. This won't necessarily benefit us immediately, but it really just puts this in place and sets us up more so for next school year as we have retirees, that they would be aware. If the case, I would certainly love to have retiree teachers come back and decide to be full-time teaching. But if the choice were, I don't really want to be a full-time teacher anymore, but I wouldn't mind coming back to help out once in a while, this would allow them to do that as soon as they receive their first PERS check, which I believe would be in August, then come in September, as soon as they receive their first check in August, they would be able to officially apply and start substituting for us. So that's really what it comes down to, is just making it available now so we know we can plan for it and communicate that to our staff as opportunities arise.
Any questions or comments from the board? Joe?
And I'm sure you don't have this information handy, but we've seen these critical labor shortages come, presentations come to us in a while. I'm just starting to wonder where don't we have a critical labor shortage? And I know this isn't just us, this is a nationwide thing, but I am sincere in the question.
That's a really good question. I'm thinking through schools and departments. I think the only fully staffed department we have right now is maintenance, and that's 5 people. I think every other department has a vacancy. Every other school has a vacancy somewhere else. So not that every one of those is critical, but given the general labor shortage that is impacting all of us and all employers nationally, I've been reading a little bit about it internationally being a problem. It's just, again, the strangest of times economically with unemployment levels and all of that. So if I come up with another area where there isn't, I'll be sure to let you know.
I just have a question, I guess. I don't see any others. Every 2 years, it's only good for 2 years. So in 2 years, if the situation has not improved, we really can't redesignate that, right? Because we can't change a substitute teacher's title or their duties, right? So this would be a 2-year fix, kind of?
Correct, yeah. And after 2 years after this designation, we could bring this back to you again. If the situation was continuing to be a problem, it really, if you just think of it like any other position, if 2 years down the road, it is still a concern to fill these positions, that we could come back to you with the same request again, and it would go for another 2 years after
So I
that.
guess what it is the person can only be in that position for 2 years. I think if I read the NRS right.
I think the designation is only good, that we have a critical need shortage is only good for 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, we reapply and say, hey, we still have a critical need shortage in these
Yeah,
positions.
no, I understand that.
I think what's a little bit different about this one than the others, with a full-time benefited position, it, you know, it could continue. Well, actually, no, it ends up working the same way. So it really is just about that. Well, no, it is different. Sorry, I got to backtrack. So with the substitute position, it really is kind of a one-time benefit. It's that benefit as when a teacher or one of these positions retires, that if they would decide to come back after their first PERS check, they could do that instead of waiting for 90 days. But that opportunity never really comes up again. Once you've retired, right? For and there's no, you're not worried, there's no consideration of collecting your PERS check though if you're a substitute, right? That's not what this is necessarily. Well, actually, yeah, sorry, no, I'm just confusing myself. It must be getting late. I'm not. Yeah.
Well, I think that somebody who comes back on a critical need, that hours are waived too. Like, I think in the school district, you can work 719 hours before, or a certain amount of money before PERS would cut you off on your PERS
Sure.
check. So I think this would maybe allow them to work more than the 719 hours also.
It does not change the number of hours. Although if you're a year-round employee, that 719 becomes 1,039 hours. So
Yeah,
like for a
right.
custodian, that's a longer time period. But it does take away there are some income limitations sometimes with this, and it does take
Right.
away any of those income limitations for the
Okay.
year.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? This is for, this is for action, so we'll ask for a motion.
These seem to be my domain, the long-winded motions. Yeah. Someone's got to get the short straw. Now, here we go. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees pursuant to NRS 286-523, as outlined by Mr. Andrew Fueling today in the document submitted, we are making and adopt the findings required by statute and made by Mr. Fueling in the Nevada PERS forms presented to the Board of Trustees, and based on those written findings, we declare that the statutory provisions provided in NRS 286-523 have been met, that there is a critical labor shortage for substitute teachers, substitute school nurses, and substitute custodians for a period not exceeding 2 years.
Second by Wilkie.
Thank you. Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public comment reference the motion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 13 now, approval of the consent agenda. And this is for possible action. I think everybody's had a chance to review it, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
We have a motion, second by trustee Walker. Any board discussion in reference to the motion? Seeing none, any public comment reference the motion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 14, informational items. This is for discussion only. I'm sure everybody's had a chance to review the informational items. Any questions or concerns, comments?
Do we need to sign this budget transfer report that's in here before we leave tonight, or has that been taken care of? I just don't remember. Did we take care of it? Okay.
This was for discussion only, so we'll move on to agenda
around, we
item
got a pizza.
number 15, request for future agenda topics. Any suggestions or requests? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 16, adjournment. And we'll adjourn at 9:14 p.m. Thank you, guys, and thank you for everybody in the audience for sticking through the whole board meeting. We appreciate it. Everybody have